Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast, where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture. We talk to producers all over the country, from small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations. Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades, we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs. Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. Excited to be back for another rousing episode. Quick update. The updates. I've been trying to do these bumpers as we record them, so the updates are going to be a little stale when you hear them, but they're probably not going to be more than 4 or 5 weeks stale. So I think I'm going to get back to trying to do some regular updates. So some of you guys are asking what's going on. You haven't seen a lot of pig stuff on the YouTube channel, and there's a reason for that. So I can't remember if I mentioned this or not, but we're actually going to phase out our breed stock. We have five piglets, 5 pigs right now. We have 2 boars and 2 sows, which is one boar too many. And then of course I still have Merida. I was thinking she was about 9 years old, and I actually was going through some old video footage, and I think she's actually 11, maybe 12 years old now. So I guess I've been dabbling in pigs a lot longer than I thought I had. It's funny how things fly by. I was going through the barn and had some milled beech that I was using for a project, and I thought, well, I think that's dry enough. I think I milled it 6 months ago. Went back and looked. It was 2 years prior to. So you get old, that stuff happens. So anyway, we're going to phase out. And by phase out, probably going to process. I don't want to sell off the breed stock because there is still some sort of disease. I haven't been able to nail it down. We don't have any large animal vets, especially any that deal with pigs. So the only thing I would have been able to do is send a piglet away for all the way to Rochester, New York, possibly, to have them study it. Maybe something over in Virginia, but it's really just been a little frustrating. So the logical thing, I think, is to process the stock and then let the ground lay fallow for a while, and maybe bring in some feeders, and even maybe introduce the feeders to a different part of the property, get some new pasture ready and some new infrastructure in place on a different part of the land, and get something in the spring of 2025. So that's what we're thinking. So kind of a cooling off period. Still, I'm not planning to be done with pigs. I'm still anxious to have something, but I think I need to be patient and bide my time well, and maybe do feeders for at least 1 year until I can figure out where we're going to go. So, but with that, I want to present a challenge/request to you all. And if you're listening to this and you feel so inclined, send me a message, send me an email, troy@redtoolhouse.com, and tell me why I should have the breed that you think I should have. Give me a shout out to say, okay, Troy, you got to have this breed. And I'll tell you, I've raised Duroc, I've raised Hampshire, I've had some Landrace, we've had large black Tamworth Cross now, and we've had Red Wattle. So I'd like to try something else. I think it's just fun exploring all the different breeds. So in fact, today, on our interview today, we're going to be talking to people that manage the IPP registry, the Idaho Pastured Pig Registry. So just interested in learning about some other breeds. There's some breeds that I'm not going to malign anybody, because I know we've had a lot of people on here with these type of breeds, but they're just not going to be a good fit for us, and those would be the Mangalitsa's, the Coonies, or the American Guinea Hogs. Probably would not do those 3. It just needs something that turns faster, because mud season is a real thing here, and if I have any of that in number, that's going to be a problem. Anyway, so yeah, send me an email, troy@redtoolhouse.com. Let me know what you think. Troy, you got to have this breed. You got to try it out. And maybe we'll do that. We'll take your advice. Okay, so let's get on to our interview. Our interview today, as I mentioned, we're going to talk to Dave and Jody Cronauer. They are partners in crime over in Wisconsin, and they have White Bison Farm. And they also, as I mentioned, manage the Idaho Pastured Pig Registry. And they've got my goodness, they got a ton of stuff going on. We talk about a lot of different things, but we're going to let them get into that and explain that. And I'll catch you guys on the back end of the interview. Today we are going up into the Great White North, and we are actually visiting White Bison Farm and speaking with Dave and Jody Cronauer. Welcome.
Welcome.
Hello.
All right. So I always have to ask, because I'm just fascinated by all the different geography. How are things in Wisconsin right now? Are you guys swimming, or are you baking like we are? What's the weather situation like?
It's warm and wet.
Yeah.
We're doing both.
Yeah.
It hasn't stopped raining all year, and it is downright hot. Yes, for northern Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah, we could definitely use some of that rain over here in the mid-Atlantic. We're a little dry right now, drier than we normally are. So I think you guys stole
That was
rain.
us last year.
Yeah. It wouldn't be called weather if it didn't change, right? Okay, so
It's nice, though. The grass grows when it's like this.
oh yeah. I bet you if it dries out enough, I bet you there's going to be some great hay production in northern Wisconsin this year.
There it is. Yep.
Well, Dave, Jody, tell me a little bit about White Bison Farm. Kind of give me that 40,000 foot elevation view of the farm, maybe a little bit of history there.
So we have a 78-acre farm in Forest County, Wisconsin. We raise bison, pigs, and horses, and then some chickens. We rotationally graze everything. As far as the bison, we have that all set up under a 30-day rotation, 31-day rotation. The pigs are on a different section of the farm by themselves, and we kind of have it broke down into 3/4 acre pens for them.
All right.
And they don't really necessarily rotate. The pigs actually, because again, we have a large breeding operation, so we have a pen for each of our boars, and then the girls will come and go depending on if they are in there and they're getting bred, or if they get close to farrowing, then we have what we call the maternity ward. And they will come out and they'll go in a 50 by 50 section by themselves to farrow and raise their little ones until weaning time. So the pens get a break. The pasture, the grass gets a break in those pig pens, but it doesn't necessarily have 0 pigs at any given time. It might be 1, it might be 6, but it works for us.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It sounds like, I assume you all in northern Wisconsin have a pretty flat topography there, slightly rolling maybe.
Yep.
Slightly rolly, yep.
Okay. Yeah, so
We used to live in Pennsylvania. It was a lot more mountains there.
Right. Yeah, I can understand that for sure. So with the bison, I don't know that I've ever had anybody on the podcast in the 120 some episodes we've done that raise bison that I can think of. So while I know we're going to be talking about pigs, but let's talk about bison for a second. First of all, why bison? And I assume you have a market there, and then just what kind of additional challenges does that bring to the farm?
So bison, basically, we started those in 2003 on our farm in Pennsylvania. That was our second animal after horses. My family has a history of heart disease, so we figured we should raise a heart-healthy meat. So that's what we went with, and it's been good. There challenges, I mean, there really isn't many. They respect fences. They super docile, and they're tasty.
They're very, very good at grazing. So unlike the horses, which, will graze and just eat until their favorite spot until it's gone, the bison really like to roam. So when we set up our rotational grazing for them, we actually did an alleyway. So their water is always in the same spot. They just have an alleyway that they walk down and back and forth, which is beneficial for them in multiple aspects because, like I said, they really like to roam. So it gives them the ability to constantly move and yet still be able to rotate and have different pastures where we can, again have grass growing. And that 30 days we come back to that other pasture.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I mean, that's good to embrace, their instincts there, and of course utilize that to for convenience. Obviously, you're not moving waters around. You're not having to transport water in that situation.
Correct.
Yeah. And I
The other thing is bison don't get hurt. They don't get sick. They don't have problems delivering babies. So they're I mean, in the scheme of everything we raise, the bison are by far the easiest. The only thing is when we go to load, if we have one that's leaving as a younger age to go, if it's white, or even we sell quite a few that are young that will go to other farms for people to, diversify their genetics. And we do have a very large, nice loading system and chute and tub because they don't obviously want their calves leaving them.
Yeah.
So that's really the only, time it's that they cause honestly any ruckus whatsoever. Otherwise, they just wander around and do their thing and they're content.
They're a very large animal, are they not?
They're not as large as you think. They're tall. Our bull's probably about 1,700 pounds. Our cows are anywhere between 900 and 1,000 pounds.
Yeah, excellent.
So in comparison to a cow, they're smaller weight wise.
But they've got the big hump, which is deceiving. So they're tall, yes.
Yeah, yeah. I've obviously seen some in captivity here at in fact, we have a friend that has a small bison farm. But it's interesting. They just seem like a much more formidable animal.
Yeah, we don't go in with them.
Yeah.
We don't. They're essentially still a wild. I mean, they come when I call them. I mean, our oldest one we've had for her and since she was 6, so we've had her our entire time of having bison. So they come when I call them, but again, even after 20 years, I don't go in with them. We don't wander around the pens. We respect the fact that they are still essentially a wild animal and unpredictable. And if we go in, it's obviously on a tractor. I don't expect to get hurt, but I'm also not going to set myself up to get hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're as fast as a racehorse, so they can run 35 miles an hour. They can pivot on all 4 feet, and they're 10 times stronger than a cow.
Yeah. Definitely something you
So
want to
they
respect.
are
them.
formidable.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Well, excellent. Well, that's yeah. I've heard such great things about the bison as far as their meat quality goes, and the nutritional value, and all those things, and of course just the yield. So that's pretty fascinating. So let's pivot over to the pigs. So tell us a little bit about your breed that you raise, and obviously you said you have a large farrowing operation, so give us a little details about that, and then of course why you landed on the breed that you landed on.
Well, I didn't want pigs, so I'm going to let Dave start with this one.
So when we started with pigs, we started with coonies. We were really early into the cooney world. We knew a lot of people in that world, and we raised those for a while. And at that time, they were pretty much pet pigs, and we were looking for more of a meat pig. And we knew that the Idaho pasture pig was being developed at that time. So I contacted the lady that was developing them, and we said, whenever you're ready, whenever you have breed stock ready, we would like some. So we ended up buying a few, and then a few more, and then a bunch more.
And fell in love, honestly. They're just such friendly and personable and easy to work with.
And delicious.
Delicious.
Right. Yeah. So what about so obviously going from coonies, a much smaller pig, and the IPP obviously has some cooney in it, but because of the Berkshire and the Duroc combo, what is your typical finish size there? Would you say your standing weight or hanging weight?
So our live weight's going to be 230 to 250, hanging weight right around that 170, 180 range.
Yeah.
And it usually takes us about 10 months to grow to that, to that weight. We, again, try very, very hard to be primarily grass fed. As you know, pigs can't be or shouldn't necessarily be 100% grass fed. So obviously they do get some grains in their diet. We know that they are, again, need minerals, and minerals are found in the ground. So we do mix our minerals in at a higher dose, allowing us the ability to hand feed a small amount of grain each day. But then we know they're still getting the minerals that they need in their diet, which allows them to graze properly instead of digging looking for minerals.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's that's a great point because one of the obviously the biggest selling point of the IPPs and of course the Kuni as well is just their grazing ability, and I don't think a lot of people realize or maybe they don't give it as much credibility. What you're saying that the rooting is necessarily sometimes it's boredom, sometimes it's other things, but it could very well be like you said the animal knowing that it's experiencing a mineral deficiency and thus searching for that. So being able to balance that in their feed kind of reduces the pressure on the pasture as well, but then of course allows them to graze more, which reduces feed costs and makes the pig more affordable.
Yes. And honestly makes the meat that much more delicious at the end.
Yeah.
And you could grow them a little faster if you wanted to put a little extra, grain into them. But again, the more grain you put in, the less they're going to graze. So there's definitely a happy medium for, you know, grain to grass ratio. And we try very hard to be primarily grass fed. We'll even grow fodder. So our feed at night, anything 3 months and older gets fodder for supper as compared to grain.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. So to say that you all fell in love with the IPP, you mentioned that already. It's kind of an understatement though, because it's not that you guys just got a couple IPP, raise them out, and even sell some of it. You guys kind of went whole hog, pardon the pun, in that situation, right?
That is correct. But had life not worked out the way it did, we probably would have been absolutely content to have, 4 or 5 girls and one boar and have sold meat a little bit at a time. But the way it worked out is when we realized that we absolutely loved this pig, the lady that developed the breed was going to sell all of her stock and get out of the pigs. And knowing that if we didn't get them and start a registry, it wasn't going to take long before they were just mixed. You'd lost the lineages, and you basically would have lost what the Idaho pasture pig was. So all of her years of hard work developing them would have been honestly gone. So, there would have been a select few like us who would have still had them, but long term, they wouldn't have gotten to so many people. And honestly, they're just a phenomenal pig.
Yeah, yeah. So, goodness. So obviously, yeah, that's a very daunting task, I would think, taking on a registration process, building a registry and those type of things. So, if we could, let's talk about that for a little bit. So, recognizing, of course, you don't want the breed lines, the genetics to just disappear or to be watered down. So you take on her breed stock, and then so what's the process of starting to register this breed and to build that registry? Is it just what's your well, I'll let you tell it. Yeah.
It was daunting.
Yeah.
To say it was daunting was an understatement. It was a lot of work. But basically we took all of the information that she gave us. Some of the names came directly from her, some of the names we just used, she'd say this is a new line and we would just name that line. But again, we had to make sure we had all of the information that she had given us, put it all correlate so that it worked out properly, and then basically started it, as a foundation from that point on. And then because we knew that she had sold pigs to other people, that besides us when we were starting, we tried very hard to reach out to as many people as she would, as she could find or she would tell us, or they contacted us, and try and get all of their information to make sure that they got into that registry as well.
Yeah.
So yes, we started out with a foundation, and then honestly, I had a gentleman from Minnesota that built the software program for us. It was it was actually really, really good at the time. But as the registry grew, we needed to make it online. It was just getting to be it was getting to be a lot more work than any one person could handle.
Sure.
So we 4 years ago, I think 4 years ago, we started an upgrade. Actually, it's not completely complete. Started an upgrade to the system itself. We had a different gentleman, he's out actually in Oregon now, built us a new program, which is all online. And yeah, it one thing led to another, and here we are. But the new program makes everything better for everyone all across the board. Everything's online. Like I said, it's quick. They get the turnaround time. It does not take anywhere near what it used to. So, as a scheme of things, everyone is happy. But like I said, we had that foundation herd, and then everything basically broke down from those.
Yeah, wow, that's fascinating. And sounds like a very large investment of time and resources and money in that situation, but I think it's incredible.
Yes.
How long ago was that?
How, what did you say?
How long ago was that when you all established the registry? I'm trying to think in my mind just how long that's been.
Well, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary.
Okay, okay.
So 10 years ago, and again, so we spent 11 years ago, we spent a year getting everything together, start building the program, putting it all together. And then it became a thing, an actual, like, good, we're here, we're ready, let's launch it. 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. And I got to say, excuse my ignorance on this because this is where I am deficient considerably in the realm of pigs when it comes to this. So, how do you get from? And I got to even find a way to word this properly. How do you get from, playing around with some genetics and saying, okay, we're going to breed an old line Duroc, we're going to bring in some Berkshire, and we're going to bring this to see what your results are, to where you say, I want to call this a new breed. I want to develop something that has a lineage that's followed, and actually everyone else recognizes it as a breed. That just seems like that's
So,
difficult.
so we weren't part of that process.
Okay.
But it takes three different breeds, 7 generations,
Okay.
and then to breed true. So, basically, you got to go through, pick out the characteristics you want, and continue to breed for that.
Yeah. Okay. So in that situation, then I assume, that for the IPP, there are very specific characteristics you're looking for, and these are the core characteristics that make up this breed. And of course, following the genetic lines kind of ties all that together. But I assume there are very specific characteristics you're looking for to say, yes, this is indeed an
There
IPP.
are.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and we put together a breed standard, and published that.
So, I mean, you're looking for a medium length snout that has an upturn. Again, you want to maintain that grazing ability. If you have a long, straight snout, they're not going to be able to graze, no matter how many minerals they get, no matter how much room they have. If they have a long, straight snout, their ability to graze is not going to be as efficient as if they've got that medium upturned snout.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You want a medium-sized pig. She bred these to be homestead pigs. These weren't the large commercial breed pigs. She bred them to be homesteading pigs. So they're a medium-sized pig. They don't have ginormous litters. Your average litter for an Idaho pasture pig is 8 to 10. Um, and again, like I said, her main goal when she was developing this pig was to create a grazing friendly homesteading type pig. And she did a very, very good job of it. But yes, our goal in creating the registry was also to maintain that breed standard. So again, not only do you have the genetics, but you also have the pig as it was meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love the fact that that's set. I mean, I know that's set for most of the breed lines, and those are key characteristics. But that helps maintain the purity of that, and we don't get 40 years down the road and say here's an IPP and go back and look at the originals like, well, those don't even look like the same pigs because it's just been watered down
Correct.
over the
Yep.
generations. Yeah, wonderful.
And you still have, again, I call them Cooney throwbacks, but this is true for all three of the breeds, right? The old Berkshire, the Duroc, and the Cooney. You'll have a litter, and obviously, the more you breed true, the less you see that. But yes, you randomly will see what I call a Cooney throwback, and it just doesn't grow quite as fast as the others.
Right.
Every now and then, you'll have one that's just honestly flightier, not as calm, not as docile, and I call that a Duroc throwback.
Yeah, so
So yeah, I mean, as a whole, definitely it breeds. It's breeding very close to what we're looking for. But again, that's the goal of a good breeder, is to pick out those ones that don't fit that breed standard and say, hey, that pig's fantastic to eat, but it is not fantastic to raise other offspring.
Yeah, it's kind of like a beauty contest. If you don't win, you end up on the plates.
Yep.
Wonderful. So
yeah, and honestly, over the years, we've gained a lot of fantastic breeders. We have breeders all over the United States now that honestly are very, very excited about this pig, want to breed the pig the way that it is supposed to be, and do a fantastic job, not only of talking about the pig and explaining to people why it's not necessarily the same as other breeds, but also breeding to maintain the breed standard that obviously we want to continue with.
Yeah. No, that's great. So is the registry, does the registry have its own online presence, or what I'm looking at here on your farm, is that kind of where all that resides, on your farm website, or is there a standalone IPP website that we can link to?
There is. You go to IdahoPasturePigRegistry.com.
Okay, great. All right, we'll make sure to include that. Wonderful.
Yep.
So,
and on it you can find a list of the breed standards on there. There are registered breeders listed on there. There's helpful information. We try and do educational, information to help people across as they're getting into the breed, right? People who get into it and they don't necessarily know. For example, here's something that we tell all of our new customers. These pigs love dandelions. They could eat every single dandelion root they ever see and be content. So every single new pasture we ever put them into, they're going to take out the dandelions. And if you don't tell people this, right, they get their pigs home and they're like, oh, Jody's place looked so fantastic. And White Bison Farm had beautiful pastures. How come mine are digging it up? But they have dandelions everywhere. So this is, some of the stuff that's on there, not only for the people who buy pigs from us, but that is out there on the registry to help other new owners as well.
Yeah. No, that's great. So how are, this is kind of my own morbid curiosity, because here where we are in West Virginia on 100 acres, we are more woodlot than we are pasture. In fact, I probably only have 5 acres of grass. How do they do with forage in the woods in those type of situations?
So, I mean, depending on your woods, if you have a grassy understory, they'll do good. If you have a brushy, raspberry, blackberry type briar stuff, they're not going to do so well. They're not going to choose to eat that. They'll eat some of the leaves, but they're not going to truly eat that as their forage. In those situations, those pigs will start to root, typically because the ground is softer, and they're looking for more available roots and whatnot because they don't have the grass forage that they need or want.
The other thing is, though, in a lot of places, depending on your canopy, if they are clearing out, so if you have a bunch of, we'll just say raspberries, right? So if you have a pile of raspberry bushes and they eventually clear those out, you'll see grass starting to grow in those areas. So depending on the canopy, they'll clear out an area that will actually be able to start growing, which is obviously beneficial to them in the long run.
Yeah.
So they do well. They just, they do like to have a better grassy area to graze. So again, I think we don't necessarily have our pastures in a bunch of woods, but Ideally, if you had woods and pasture combined, it would give them an area to make their extra wallows, get out of the sunshine, and an area where they can go and graze.
Yeah. Yeah. We're actually, as we move along in different areas of the property, we're trying to create more of a silvopasture configuration, and we are fighting stilt grass right now. We have a lot of stilt grass that comes in, but my large blacks seem to like it, and so it is this interesting dance. The stilt grass is good for erosion control, but it's super invasive and causes issues. But I'm just curious. Yeah,
as long as they're eating it, though, it's not all bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's forage there, and of course, we're Appalachian hardwood forest, so we have tons and tons of mast in the late summer and fall. So the amount of protein on the ground is substantial. So it kind of works out well in the end, I guess. Okay, so let's obviously ton of stuff going on there, a lot of time and expense that you all have invested. So of course, to be a profitable farm, that has to be converted into some revenue stream. So obviously, we talked about the bison meat, and we've talked about the Idaho pasture pigs as far as selling some of the breed lines. Do you guys do cuts? Do you do pigs for processing, wholes, halves, that type of thing as well?
I like to say we sell pork or pigs any which way we need to.
Okay.
So if we have breed quality, then yes, we have people who are looking for breeders. If we have barrows, which again, you know what a barrow is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a castrated boar that doesn't meet breed quality, we do try to sell those to people who are looking for pigs to raise themselves. All of the, I call them ugly gilts, right? So the gilts that don't make breed standard, we tend to keep them on our property. Those are the ones we raise up. And yes, we sell halves, quarters, wholes. We have it set up so that if people need to come, and let's say someone comes and wants just a thing of bacon, he can buy just a thing of bacon that day. So we do sell both, like I said, live and pork, any which way that people would like it.
Yeah. Do you sell that on farm? Do you go to do you do deliveries? Do you go to farmers markets?
I used to do farmers markets, but then I gained enough clientele that now I don't have enough to do that.
Yeah.
So now we sell halves, quarters, and wholes is the majority of what we sell. And then, like I said, every now and then you'll have people I have a couple customers that come, once a week or every 2 weeks to pick something up. But as a whole, most of our clientele for the meat is halves, quarters, and wholes.
Yeah.
And like I said, we started out with a farmer market, but gained that clientele so that I don't necessarily have to do the farmers markets any longer.
Interesting. Okay. So out of curiosity then, so how do you quarter a pig when you sell it like that? So how do you package that up as a quarter instead of just a half or a whole?
So for our pork boxes, we'll call them, a whole pig is 120 pounds of finished meat. And in that you have a certain amount of bacon, ham, pork chops. So that's how we do it. And obviously a quarter is just a quarter of that whole.
Yeah. Okay.
So 30 pounds is a quarter. And we just divide it up all the same.
Awesome. Very good.
We used to, we've sold it every which way we can think of, but this is the way we've been selling it for probably 8 years now, and honestly works the best because people know what they're getting up front. They know what the cost is. We don't change the cost. So everything is included as far as processing, butcher fees. They do get a little bit of variation. But if they wanted ham slices instead of full hams, they can do that. If they're sausage, they could have ground pork, they could have ground sausage, they could have links, they could have patties, or they could have brats. So there's a variety that they still get to choose, but they know how much of it they're getting up front and they know the cost, which honestly, we haven't hardly had, I don't think we've had one complaint since we switched to doing it this way. Whereas in the past, you'd have people, you'd say, okay, we're going to do this much hanging weight. And then you pay the butcher and processing fees. And you know what happens. People go crazy with all these special things. And then their processing fees are crazy and astronomical and they don't understand why. And
Right. Yeah.
then they're somehow mad at us for that. This just works better.
And their hanging weight was 170 pounds, but they only got 120 pounds back.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah, I've had that conversation, especially as we raise larger pigs over the last 12 years. And yeah, you get one that comes in at a hanging weight of 220, 230, and then you have to explain why their budget was blown. They were estimating X and ended up paying
Yeah,
Y.
so what we do is we'll take 10 pigs in at a time and then bring them home and then make those pigs out of that.
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily get the exact same pig. They're all our pigs, and they're all Idaho pasture pigs, but they're not all from the exact same pig. So you could have pork chops from, 3 different pigs in your bundle.
Yeah.
We'll call it a bundle or a box. Yep.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, and I love the conformity of that. Like you say, it really eliminates a lot of the surprises. People know what they're dealing with, and for you all, it works out well too, because if you have surplusage or if you have unders, then you can obviously make that up with other pigs. If for some reason
Exactly.
one didn't grow out as well, or one was a tank, then you can spread that around a little bit.
Yeah, it works. Honestly, it really works well for us to do it this way.
Yeah, yeah, excellent.
And then we've done some wholesale accounts as well, delivering pigs to butchers for wholesale people.
Yeah, yeah. Is there much of a market for roasters in your area? Do you run into that?
We have people ask all the time for them, but we don't have anybody close to us that'll scald.
Yeah, that's always the challenge. Okay.
It
So,
definitely is.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'll talk a little bit more about your setup and how many, including your breed stock and the ones that you're finishing, how many head of hogs do you normally have at any given time?
That's always a loaded question. We don't ever count them.
Okay.
I'm gonna say 1 to 300.
Yeah, 1 to 300 at the moment.
Yeah.
Early or breeding season or farrowing season, obviously that number's a lot higher because of piglets.
We had an ungodly amount of boys this year, so we do have, I think, an extra pen and a half of barrows that we normally would not have, which isn't the end of the world. I'll just sell more pork, but it's just kind of interesting the way it works out. Some years you get lots of girls, some years you get lots of boys.
Yeah, yeah. And so I would assume in north central Wisconsin it gets a little brisk in the wintertime. So how does that affect your operation? Are you trying to downsize by that point, trying to get everything sold off, processed, and scheduling your farrowing so that at fall that's rotating out, or you just kind of keep trucking all year long?
We kind of keep trucking all year long as far as numbers go. We try to butcher earlier in the winter if we can, just for that reason. But it all goes to that timing of 10 months, right? From 10 months from birth to butcher. And really the weather doesn't affect these pigs. They live outdoors year round. They have A-frame huts. We've never had an issue with the cold, really.
Yeah, yeah. So they're you talked about the little farrowing, the maternity ward area. So even the farrowing taking place in the colder months, they're still out in those A-frame huts and using your farrowing sheds or farrowing huts that you guys have created.
No.
Okay.
So we take the maternity ward down for the winter. So the maternity ward is set up in Premier One netting fence, with high tensile as the bigger boundaries of our fencing.
Mm-hmm.
So the Premier One netting fence comes down for the winter because we could have 6 feet of snow and, a 24-inch hog fence is going to be gone before December.
Right.
So that comes down. We try not to have litters between November and April. So I know that's a little different than some people who like to have their early litters. We've had litters in January at 20 below and they've done fine. But yes, it does make it a little more challenging when you're having, piglets born at that time of the year. So we try to have the majority of our piglets between April 1st and be basically weaned by November 1st.
Yeah.
And I mean, farrowing in the winter like that for us was more stressful just because we were always concerned, are the piglets cold, that kind of stuff. And we never use a heat lamp. So it's just our preference not to do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I don't really like to fight with the snow. This way it works out. It doesn't matter how much snow we get or when it comes, they're all tucked safely in their bigger pens and content.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't fathom farming in 6 feet of snow. That just seems ridiculous to me. So yeah, it'd be good to scale that back as much as possible during those times. Now, we have mud season, and I assume you guys have mud season as well, but your mud season is probably not December through February like ours is. But I would assume with the IPPs, they're much easier on the pasture. So sacrificial pasture probably isn't as big a deal for you all as it is for some of us that have the larger breeds.
Yeah, and we really don't have sacrificial pastures for them. They're in the same pastures year round.
Other than the little ones.
Other than the little ones that were born late in the fall.
Yeah.
They stay in a sacrificial.
They're too small to get into the high tensile at that point. So they get to go into sacrificial pastures for the winter months just because they have to have different fencing. So we've got smooth wire up for them to go to make it, or hog panels to make it through the winter with the snow.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. All right.
They're too smart. They'd know they could sneak under that fence in a heartbeat.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They know when it's down.
Yep.
Well, Jody, another thing that I've seen on your website, and I think is interesting, I think our audience would appreciate this, is you actually have written a book about all of this, correct?
I did. I absolutely did. It didn't start out that I was going to, but the more times you answered the same questions,
Right.
the more times you were like, this would be something I should do simply to make life easier for, honestly, so many different people. And every time someone says to me, I read your book, I use your book and I refer back to it all the time. And I think, and that's exactly what I was hoping for when I wrote it.
Awesome.
So yes, I did write a book and I wrote it to help all of the other people raising these pigs.
Yeah. So
And it really applies to, it doesn't just apply to Idaho pasture pigs. I mean, obviously our main experience was coonies and Idaho pasture pigs, but it does reflect into other pasture, breeds as well.
yeah. 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 I'm sure there's a lot of best practices that carry over regardless of the breed you're dealing with.
The joy of that is sometimes you read things and you're like, well, this is not going to work for me. And sometimes you read things and you're like, well, this is perfect. This will work perfectly for us. But either way, you're learning.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a very good point. When I've spent multiple times at Polyface Farm, and because it's only about 4 hours away from us, and recognize the uniqueness of the land of the Shenandoah Valley. It's a very unique, it's like, okay, there's a lot of things that Joel Salatin can do when it comes to his pigs and some of his other animals that I just can't do in central West Virginia. It has a totally different topography. So it's like, okay, I've learned that I can't do that versus say, well, that was invaluable information, or it has no bearing on what we're trying to do here. I know, okay, try to stay away from trying to do those type of things because it's just not going to work.
Yep. But either way, you've learned something.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. So where can, if people are interested, and the name of the book is Raising Pigs on Green Pastures, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
And where can
You can find it you can actually find it on Amazon.
Okay.
Or Dorrance Publishing.
Wonderful. All right. So
Yeah.
So we'll check that out, and that's great. How long ago did you write that?
Feels like yesterday, but I think it's been 5 years now.
Wonderful. Very good. Very good. All right. Well, I want to be sensitive, John. My goodness, there's probably 2 more hours worth of stuff we want to talk about, but I want to be sensitive to your time. So what would you say? I mean, you guys have a lot going on, we haven't talked about it, but I noticed on your website as well, and this is really going to show my ignorance. What's a gypsy Vanner horse? And why do you have them?
Well, because they're awesome. So they're a draft breed.
Well, let's back up a little bit here. When I started dating Jody, she had 2 horses. So when we got married, we bought a farm for these 2 horses, which then started this whole process. So she can continue with her story now.
Okay. So horse math is a real thing, man, it sounds like.
Yeah, horse math, exactly. They had paints, and paints, I mean, they're pretty to me. But then I was helping a friend who was looking for a horse, and I came across this ad, a really cheap horse, and it was $5,000. And at that time, horses were selling for $50. And I was like, what would possibly make this horse really cheap? But it's $5,000. And I knew not one thing about gypsy vanners at that time either. So ironically enough, the people were only a couple hours from us. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to go see this horse now, because how do I not? So sure enough, I drove down there and came back, and my poor husband said, well, did you buy a horse? And I said, no, I bought 2.
So were they buy one, get one free maybe at that chance?
No, they were
not so lucky.
They were not, but to be fair, they were kind of, because she did have a huge discount.
Okay.
It was still very expensive, but I was breeding paints at that point. So we ended up selling the paints and slowly over time gaining gypsies as we went. But they're basically a draft breed, but they were bred by the gypsy people to pull their carts and be very, very friendly with their children. So their children could run around, they're gypsy people, just lived like nomads. They wandered wherever. Their kids ran all over the place, and they wanted horses that were able to put up with anything and be strong and sturdy enough to pull their carts. So they're smaller. They range usually around 14 to 15 hands, which is, for a draft breed, quite a bit smaller than the 18 hands. But at the same point, they're very, very wide, right? They're still the draft body. They still have large feet. They've got the big feathers. They're just, overall, they're very, very beautiful horses. And I like to say that's what makes you look at them. But their personalities make you never want another horse. So they are, in my world, the kuni of the horse world, right? Because the kuni, I don't think you could find a nicer, more docile, more laid back pig if you tried. And I've met a lot of breeds, but those kunis are just the most laid back pig I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the gypsies are. Nothing phases them, nothing bothers them. I mean, obviously, when I have foals, we do a lot of work to imprint. I do a lot of work to make sure that they're what I would want if I was buying a horse. But in the scheme of things, I do the same training I did with my paint babies. And these gypsies really pick things up very fast. And I think it's mostly because they're very calm.
Yeah, interesting. So, my goodness, so with the bison, 100 to 300 head of pigs, and then now the gypsy vanner horses, you all probably have a surplus of manure at any given time, I assume, too, right?
None.
We do not.
We never have any manure.
Everything is dispersed on pasture.
Very good. All right.
The only time I have manure is when I have a mare that is staying in, because I imprint. So if they're close to delivering, then I will keep them in a stall for the night. So if it takes her 3 or 4 nights to have a baby, I'll have, 3 or 4 loads of manure that go out to the pile.
Yeah.
So depending on how many mares I have having babies and how slow I am at anticipating when the baby's coming, we'll have a little pile of horse manure, but that's it.
Yeah. And that's the beauty.
We don't have time to shovel poop.
Right. Yeah. That's the beauty of the rotational process. Like you say, you're putting those nutrients back where they need to be and spread out. Excellent.
Yep.
All right.
Well, and honestly, pig manure breaks up so fast.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if it rains, and then by the time we get through winter, everything, even if they did have some piles that, accumulated, in the fall when the grass isn't growing as well, and they'll try and stay closer to the hay, even by the time you hit spring, the winter itself has completely broken the manure apart and dispersed it, and it's into the ground, and you're starting over.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, good. So, so where do you all see the White Bison farm in the next 5 years? What are the next goals? Is there expansion goals? Is it keep on trucking? Are there a specific area you want to focus on or develop?
It's pretty much keep on trucking, business as usual. Um, we wouldn't mind getting a few more bison. Um,
And a few less pigs. I only say that because when you're starting out with the registry, we had to have all of the lines. And you had to because you were concerned that if you didn't get those lines out, you were going to lose the genetics of one of those lines. So now that we have finally gotten to the point where we have many breeders across the United States, we've got those lines dispersed better. I personally would like to not have to carry all of the lines all the way through all the time,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, definitely. Well, like you said, and it also gives the opportunity to spread out those lines. It's not, the proverbial eggs all in one basket type situation either on your all's farm.
yeah,
Correct.
we deliberately did that early on was to send pigs to different areas of the country and try to not send the same lines to the same areas so that those people could start, buying and selling from each other and trading back and forth and that kind of stuff just to get that diversity everywhere.
Yeah, that's great.
And I will say that majority of our customers, so for the people who are buying breeding stock from us, I'm going to say 80% of those people aren't buying pigs to be breeders, right? They're buying a breeding pair, but they're buying a breeding pair because they want to raise quality meat.
Yeah.
So it's important that they get the breed standard in their breeding pair, but they're not turning into a breeder who wants to sell breeders to other people. They just want to raise their pigs, have their litter or two of piglets a year, sell some meat if they have it, and then have quality meat for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's the majority of the people buying our breed stock.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we always said on our farm. We're not looking for pigs to go to college. We just want them to grow out well and be a good product at the end.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wonderful. All right. Well, I have to ask you all the question I ask everybody on the podcast, and that is, and both of you can, of course, give your own answers, but what is your favorite part? What do you like the most about raising pigs on pasture?
Go ahead.
Well, so I didn't want pigs because I grew up and my grandma raised pigs outside, but they were in a small confined spot. They were just your traditional Yorkshires and they smelled terrible. So when he said, I want to get pigs, I was like, over my dead body. So here we are.
So I got a pig.
And she's still kicking too, so something had to
Yep.
give.
Well, I got a pig and she said, where's its mate?
It was so lonely in that pasture by itself. So my favorite part, honestly, of raising the Idaho pasture pigs are that number one, they don't smell, and my pig pastures look like my horse pastures. I could interchange the horses and the pigs. In fact, I do. In the fall, when I have girls that I don't want pregnant, I will borrow a horse or a bison pasture for some of those girls to go in because I know they're going to help those pastures and not dig it up and root it up and cause a huge destruction. So I can intertwine them, but at the same point, they're very friendly pigs. So they all have personalities. They're very comical, and I know, I've got my favorites, obviously, everyone does. So if I'm, walking out and I'll say Paige because she's probably my favorite right now. She's probably been my favorite. If Paige sees me, she can't help it. She must come run to the fence to say hi. And I don't usually give snacks as I'm walking past. But yeah, they're very personable, and I love that about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I like, the ease of caring for them, moving them. You can move these pigs very easily. They do what you need them to do. So you're not fighting with them every day.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And And that goes a very long way, especially when you have the numbers that you all have. That becomes an exponential benefit. But for sure, having an animal that's smart enough to know how to be moved around and to be managed and not be a headache really does go a long way, especially at scale.
Yeah, we've all seen the people that have struggled to get a pig on a trailer to go to butcher for 6 hours,
Yeah.
and that animal is so worked up. Um, we basically set up our alleyway, open a gate, and by the time we get there, half the pigs are already on the trailer
Right. That's
waiting
great.
for us.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, when we moved from Pennsylvania to Wisconsin, we moved to this farm and had a clean slate. So there was nothing for fencing, and we had to put it all up, which was, a lot of work. But in the scheme of things, we could set it up how we wanted it. So,
Right.
like Dave said, we set up a 16-foot runway. All of our pastures can open up into that runway. It's 16 feet, so a hog panel fits across it. So if I want to move a sow by myself into the maternity ward, I just put the hog panel up, open the gate, she walks in, I shut the gate, and we're good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That type of infrastructure, like you said, that initial investment of time and money is substantial, but my goodness, it pays dividends over the years. And as you get older
Yeah.
too, that's the thing I run into. As you get older, it's like, man, it's nicer having things that you don't have to grunt and strain and lift and do all those type of things. That investment on the front end really helps out.
Absolutely.
Right. Right. Well,
So
wow.
what's your favorite part about raising pigs?
Oh my goodness, yeah, you're throwing my question right back at me. So I've answered this a
Well,
couple.
I'm curious. You
Yeah,
have large blacks. I want to hear.
yeah. So I've in the last 12 years that we've been doing this. I just like trying different breeds. So I started off with Duroc. I had some Hampshire. Let's see, we've had the large black Tamworth cross. We've had red wattle. And had a land race that I bred for a while, and she was a great pig. So we've done AI, we've had boars, so we've kind of dabbled in all of that. And probably the thing that I've experienced the most in all of that is the personalities. The pigs, not only the different breeds have different personalities, but the pigs within that breed have personalities. Like I'm done being ashamed to admit, but I have a 9-year-old pig, and she's become kind of like the matriarch of the farm. She's just a pet now, and her name is Merida, and she's just a hateful old woman, and I just love her because it's just that she just come up and I give her scratch her behind the ears, and she just kind of like, get away from me, loser, type of thing. But she's not aggressive. She doesn't bite. She doesn't do anything like that. She's just whines, just complains, and it's just funny because it's just her personality. She was like that when she was 10 months old, and now she's 9 years old. She's the same. So it's like you're meeting new almost like meeting new people each time that you have a new litter come in, and so it's been, and of course just meeting people as we acquire these different breeds from different breeders. We get to meet new people, and I enjoy all that. So I like the variety that the pigs offer. But then, of course, I'm also a very big fan of bacon, so I love the finished product. That's probably one of my biggest benefits. Yeah. So
Who doesn't? I mean, okay, that's not true. I met one person at a farmer's market who told me they hated bacon. And the person in line behind him said, after they left, they walked away, and he says, "You just can't trust someone who doesn't like bacon."
yeah, I gotta say, and I'm you guys aren't native Wisconsin, so I guess I can do this, but I gotta say, I have a friend who was a native Wisconsin, and they don't like smoked or cured bacon. They do the kind of the Canadian bacon type style, and I told him, man, I don't know. I don't know if we can be friends. That you don't like good Southern style bacon. It just something about that just doesn't seem right. So
So in just to be clear, I did grow up in Wisconsin.
oh, did you? Oh, okay. Oh,
He
no, all
did.
right. So
And
there.
Dave grew up in Pennsylvania,
Okay.
and then we met in Iowa, and here we are.
Oh, really? Well, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we lived there for years, and then we moved to here.
Okay. Wisconsin native. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Fire shot across the bow there.
But I do like regular bacon.
Okay, very good. You've redeemed yourself. You've
Yeah.
But they do really like Canadian bacon here for some reason.
yeah.
They do.
I guess it's proximity to Canada.
We are close to Canada.
Yeah, it may have something to do with it. Very good. Well, I really appreciate y'all coming on the podcast, and it's been a great conversation. In fact, we're almost hitting an hour. It's hard to believe. It doesn't feel like it's been that long, but like I said,
It doesn't.
sensitive.
You're very easy to talk to.
Well, thank you. You as well.
Thank you.
So tell us, we talked about some things here, but let's kind of condense this, because I know people like to go to the end of the podcast and kind of find some of the summary information when it comes to when they're interested about finding out more. So let's talk about all the different ways that people can find you online.
Sure. So our farm personally, you can find, we have our website at whitebisonfarm.com. We're also on Facebook for White Bison Farm. And then as far as the registry itself goes, there's Idaho Pasture Pig IPP is a Facebook group. There's also Idaho Pasture Pigs, which is a Facebook page that is public for everyone. And then, like I said, the Idaho Pasture Pig Registry.com has a website. So there's definitely 5 different ways to find us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you can call us.
Or you can call us. Absolutely. We love to talk.
Or come visit.
Very good. Wonderful. Well, yeah, and yeah, the resources of information and all those platforms is just fantastic, and it's great to have community like that's focused on a specific breed, so you can deal with those specific questions, and so that's great. Well, I really appreciate y'all being on, and I'm going to let you go here, and I pray you all have a great week, and thank you for being on the podcast. Well, all right. Well, I appreciate the Cronauers coming on the podcast and sharing their experience with us. Pretty cool. So be sure to check out my goodness, all the different websites, all the different ways you can get a hold of them. Check it out. If you're interested in learning more about Idaho Pasture Pigs, visit their registry, and they've got a lot of good information there as well. So speaking of good information, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out again for our homesteading conference that Red Tool House is co-hosting with our local conservation district here in central West Virginia. We are going to have this, it's a 2-day event in September 13th and 14th. And that's a Friday, Saturday. It is in Charleston, West Virginia. It is at our church, which is a good-sized facility, so it can handle a big crowd. I think our main auditorium seats right at 1,000. And we only are selling 500 tickets to this. And ticket sales are picking up, and they're picking up and picking up some steam. So if you're thinking about coming, and you haven't bought your tickets yet, you may want to go ahead and do that. Now, we've got a pretty good lineup. I'll post a link to our website we have for homesteading-ish.com, and you'll see our lineup. We've got Joel Salatin. We've got, we've got Josh Draper from Stony Ridge Farm. We've got our good old buddy Chuck Lewis from Sheridan Park Farm is going to come up. Of course, I'll be speaking as well. Sean and Beth Doherty. And Nathan Elliott from Out of the Woods. So we're going to be talking some serious sawmill stuff with him. I can't believe I forgot about Nathan, but really anxious to see him in person, talk to him digitally and stuff, but I'm anxious to see him in person. We have, right now, the way it's lined out, we have, I think, 36 different topics, individual topics, all dealing with homesteading. Everything from forest management. Obviously, we'll be talking about pigs. Several of us will be talking about pigs. Lot of good stuff. I'm really excited, and we've got everything from YouTube celebrities like Joel and Josh and those guys, all the way over to people in academia. That when we're talking about specific things like organic composting and all that type of thing, we've got educated, proven people in those situations. So it's going to be a really good eclectic variety of discussion and presenters, and we are going to jam-pack 2 days worth of really good homesteading information. So be sure to check that out. If you can make it over to Charleston, West Virginia, there'll be accommodations. There's actually a hotel just across the way from the church. So there's plenty of opportunities there to have a place to stay. And of course, Charleston is the capital of the whole entire state, so there's other accommodations as well there and other neat things to see. So come to West Virginia. You may not want to leave. All right, well, I want to give a continued shout out. I promise you, if the dust ever settles, I'm going to go in and I want to revamp the Patreon setup because I want to be, I just want to be more, I don't know the right thing to say, maybe more equitable or more open to suggestions with that. But I want to kind of revamp, and man, I really appreciate you Patreon people that have been hanging in there and doing that. You're really allowing me to keep this going. It's seeing that allows me, it actually forces me to say, yes, this is still a priority. A podcast that is zero revenue generating, it keeps it on my priority list. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but knock on wood, we've been pretty good with doing an episode every 2 weeks here in the last several months. Actually, since January, so we've been cranking that out pretty regularly, and it's all because of our Patreon people. You guys, it shows me that you're willing to part with some hard-earned money, and you find value in the podcast, and you want to continue to hear us do interviews. So I really appreciate that. Thank you guys so much, and of course, would love to have feedback on what can I do to value add your support. And so I'd love to have feedback on that. So feel free to email me, troy@redtoolhouse.com. All right, well, I'm a little chatty Cathy on this one, so I'm going to get off of here and catch you guys on the next one. Y'all take care.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast or to submit topics or recommend guests for future episodes, visit redtoolhouse.com.